Hi everyone, my name is Ahmed Jawad. In this video, I will explain how you can build a serverless student application on AWS, starting from a simple idea and ending with the working environment. Okay, in this video I will focus on how student can build a real application without managing servers using AWS services like Lambda, API Gateway, Dynamo Database, and S3. So think of this as something you could actually build for your campuses. Well, for example, an event registration system, or you can say a help desk app, or a student request portal. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. Uh, Before serverless, most student apps follow this simple flow. As you can see in the scheme, I will send a request, it goes to backend server and then to a database. On paper, this looked very simple. In reality, it creates problem for students. First, as you can say here in picture, first there is a server to manage. Someone has to keep it running, update it, and then fix things when it breaks, so that can keep running consistently. For students juggling classes and exam, that's a burden. Secondly, you can see scaling becomes a nightmare during events like course registration or society sign-ups. Traffic spikes suddenly. Traditional servers cannot handle that and crash at the worst time. Third, there is cost and maintenance, which is very important. Even if no one is using the app, you are still paying for the server. And finally, it is simply hard for students to deploy, which is the you can say main issue for the student. The setup itself scares many people away before the app ever goes live. This is exactly why many student projects never make it past the idea stage. Then moving on to our next slide. Now let's look at the serverless solution on the AWS. Instead of managing a serverless or server overless, the user directly interact with the AWS services. You can say here in middle, when a student makes a request, it first goes through Amazon API here, API gateway. API gateway acts as a front door. It exposes an you can say HTTP endpoint and decided where the request should go. That request, you can say here, that request then triggers AWS Lambda, which run our backend code only when needed. As there is no server running in the background, the code execute, does its job, and then stop. If we need to store or retrieve data, Lambda talks to Amazon Dynamo database, as seen here, which is fully serverless, no SQL database. And for things like you can say front end files or static content, we use Amazon S3. The big advantage here is that AWS handles scaling automatically. During events or peak usage, everything scales up. When traffic drops, we are not paying for idle resources. Then moving on to our final slides. This slide summarizes the complete serverless architecture on AWS and how each services plays a specific role. Everything starts with API gateway. It's the single entry point for all client requests. Whether a student submits a form or fetches data, API gateway receives that request and routes it correctly. Next is AWS Lambda. As you can see here, Lambda runs the backend logic in response to those requests we receive. There are no servers to provision or manage. The code runs only when an event happens, execute the logic, and then stops. Finally, for data storage, we use AWS Dynamo database as mentioned here. It's a fully serverless, no SQL database that can scale automatically. This make it ideal for student applications where traffic can suddenly increase during events or registration. Finally, AWS Amazon S3 handles static content. Things like you can say HTML, CSS, and JavaScript or images are served separately from the backend. This keeps the architecture simple, fast, and cost effective. Together, these services allow students to build a real scalable application without worrying about infrastructure. You focus on building features and AWS handles everything else.